Okay, so I'm doing a episode on my way to work. You might be able to hear my car in the background. I want to get some content out there. I want to start cranking stuff out, and I've been sitting on this one for a while. And the more I obsess about it and overthink it, the less I'm going to release something. Especially in my chaotic world environment that I now find myself immersed in. So I'm just gonna literally just sit in my car. I just pulled into the garage at my office, and I'm just going to sit here and talk for about 5-10 minutes tops. So what I'm going to be talking about today is the tail end of my rebuttal episode. So there was that critic of mine that we had a debate, like a 3-hour long debate, and then there was all kinds of flaws in either my arguments or his arguments that I went back and did a rebuttal episode. As petty as that is, this is the most important topic in the history of the multiverse, if there is one. So to me, it's like we got to get it right, and that's why I'm here. But at the end of that episode, I said that I would release a separate episode dealing with the most important topic, the concept that he brought up, the question of, he said, hey, look, I'm an atheist, you're a believer. And he says, does your belief in God, does that make you love your wife more than I do? I was driving. I'm sorry to slam the brakes on this episode right at the start here, but as I was driving to work today, listening to this episode, I always preview an episode before I release it. And as I'm driving to work today, previewing this episode, I realized that how preposterous the question even is that he posited, but also how preposterous any attempt to answer that question would equally be. In fact, trying to answer that question is more preposterous than asking it. And the reason I say that, because I can give you just a straight up knee-jerk answer to that question, having thought through it even more, especially after this revelation I just had. I can give you a very quick and easy, super easy answer, a one-word answer to his question. Does knowing God, having these mystical experiences and the takeaways and all that stuff thereafter, the integration or whatever, does that deepen and broaden your capacity to love? That's the real question he was asking. He put it more like, are you capable of loving your wife more than I love myself? Or then more, that was funny. Are you capable of loving your wife more than I love mine? That's really not what he was asking. He was asking the other question. Does it deepen and broaden your capacity for love? The answer is no. Like straight up, the answer is just straight up no. Now, before everyone starts, being like, Andrew, what are you doing? You're supposed to be defending God here and all this other stuff, y'all. The bottom line is that we all have an infinite amount of love in us, period. So we're not deepening or broadening anything. What we are simply doing in the process of, realizing non-duality, right? Which is the same thing as saying realizing oneness. The method that brought me to that was, the rocket ship that brought me to that. It was the vehicle of God, right? But it's all God, and that's what I think a lot of people get confused. But regardless, oneness and non-duality through the vehicle of God is what removed the filters and stage gates and walls that I had built up around me that restricted or limited my access to the infinite welling of love that was already inside of me and is inside of the gentleman that I was debating. Period. That's it. That's an open and shut case right there. The answer is no. I don't. I do not think that it deepened or broadened my capacity for love. What I think happened, or what I know happened, is that it showed finding God and realizing oneness and unity through him removed the scales from my eyes. It gave me access again to the infinite love that was already within me. It was already there, waiting to be set free, and now it is. Not to its fullest capacity. I still have filters and stage gates, y'all. The walls, I still have them. I'm not saying I'm perfect by any stretch of the word, but there's the answer right there. I could just stop right now, but I implore you to keep listening, because I dive deeper into this subject in a very incredibly beautiful way. But just know from henceforth in this episode, whenever I say, does knowing God deepen or broaden my capacity for love, just try to imagine that I'm saying instead, does knowing God remove the filters and stage gates and walls, and encircling my infinite capacity for love that's in all of us. Try to imagine each time that I say that I'm really saying that. Okay, so there you go. I implore you again to continue listening to this episode, because there's a lot of freaking amazingly beautiful stuff that happens. And there's some amazing stuff that we cover specifically. Just listen. Okay, I love you all. Just listen. Does your belief in God, does that make you love your wife more than I do? And, if you strip the wife part away, y'all, and I want to do that because it's impossible for me to know how much this man loves his wife. That's just impossible. We're going to strip away the word wife from this, because that just gets in the way of the bigger question, which is, does a belief in God, and my mystical experiences and all my takeaways therein, does that broaden and deepen my capacity for love in general? And again, y'all, I'm not going to compare myself to this guy, because I can't. It's impossible for me to know this man's capacity for love. I mean, I have some clues that I can go off of. I mean, our very first interaction, the very first thing he said to me, and was very rude, very troll-like. I mean, this guy just screams troll. In fact, he admitted it himself on our discussion. He's like, back in the day, I would get on the internet and just roast people. It's like, well, that's being a troll. Okay. Like right off the bat, y'all, I'm not going to compare. I'm not going to try to compare myself here, but right off the bat, if you put a gun to my head and you were like, you have to make a judgment call on, is this guy generally a loving, compassionate person? People who hide behind their keyboards and cyberbully other people, especially if you have a towering intellect, which this guy does, I don't know what to tell you, man. I don't know what to tell you. But this isn't going to be a bashing session about with this guy. Let me just, again, dive into the heart of the topic here, which is I'm not going to try to compare myself to him, all right? Again, it's impossible. What I will do instead, because I used to be very much like him, I was an atheist, agnostic, rationalist, materialist, loved my science, etc. I will compare my old self to my new self. That is definitely something that I can do. So let me start, and here's the thing, I could get into specifics here. I could get into stuff like, I used to hate myself so much that I didn't want children because I didn't want something even resembling me in the tiniest bit to draw breath. I didn't want that thing to experience the things that I experienced and do the things to people that I did to people. I knew how miserable of an existence not only that little kid would have, but what a miserable existence this thing would bring about to others. And I was like, I hate myself. And so why would I want myself here? No, I don't want kids. I hated kids. I wanted all children away from me at all times. I was like, get them away. I mean, my nieces and nephews, I love them and everything, but like pretty much every other kid, I'm like, get them the hell away from me. I thought humans in general were a plague on this planet. I was secretly, and not even secretly, y'all, I would tell this to people. I was like, I would be like, you know what? We have an overpopulation problem, and most of the world's problems would be solved overnight if there was half of the people, like if you just woke up in the morning and half the people on the planet were just gone. But I didn't say it like that. I just said, you woke up in the morning and half of the people, there's only half of the people on the planet. Like I left out the they're gone part, and I didn't do it intentionally. I just never went there, because if I would have plumbed the depths of what that truly meant, y'all, I think hopefully I would have been smart enough to understand what I was calling for. I did an episode called No Joke, y'all, where I went down this logic trail, explaining to people how I used to be and how I needed to fix myself. And I was defending my own thoughts of like, this is how I used to think, guys, and it's not too far off base in terms of logic because of blah, 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 blah. And I went down, and as I'm saying these words, I start to kind of relive and feel that feeling again. And I'm getting all pumped up, and I'm like, yeah, dude, you're right here. You're onto something. And then I came across the whole, if half the people on the planet were here. And I had this moment where I realized that I was just calling for 4 billion people to die. Y'all, that's when I say half of the people on the planet, I'm going to rehash this again. I said this in that episode, but I'll say it again because it's important to know and understand. When I say half of the people on the planet, that means your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, your best friend, you, half of y'all are gone. Half of everyone you know. And now, granted, maybe you would be one of the lucky few who everyone you know, all of them survive. But I'm just saying, on average, y'all, this is nightmarish stuff, and that is why I can tell you from me, maybe not all people need this, and if this guy is one of those people, God bless you, sir. Even though you don't believe in God, I do, and if you can truly love people deeply and profoundly, and a broad swath of people, not just your wife, y'all, dude, but I'm talking even these people on the internet that you want to rip to shreds. If you can find yourself in those people, first of all, but then love them like a brother, love them, as yourself, because it is yourself. I won't get into that, but if you truly are like that, and this whole troll kind of thing is just a facade, maybe you're planting seeds for people so that they can truly find themselves. I know someone like that. It's very dangerous game to play with people, because you can really f people up that way. But maybe he's one of these people that are strategically planting seeds of negativity so that the person that they're planting the seed for, does the flip, does the reverse and unlocks more potentiality in themselves and greater love and stuff. Maybe that's his game, but I highly doubt it. And here I am starting to get closer to saying, like I said, that I wouldn't compare myself to him. But again, if you truly have those depths and the depth and breadth of love without certain understandings about, we can even take God out of the equation here, and we should, because it was myself that was my portal to God. And that's a critically important aspect of all of this, is that, I made up this saying. I made up this quote probably about a half a year ago, and it goes like this: the true Bible is within your heart, because it is the heart that understands the Bible. That says about everything you want to say. Now, forget the Bible, y'all. I only kind of dabble in the Bible. I cherry pick like a mofo, but I think everybody cherry picks everything, period. We have to. We can't blindly accept every single thing we see and hear and touch and feel and all this. Like, we can't blindly accept everything. We have to cherry pick. And you bet your ass I cherry pick stuff from the Bible. So if I offended anyone right out the gate, because I know people that don't believe in the Bible at all, think it's a joke, they shut down the second you mention the Bible. You have to come at them with a different thing to relate to them. This is a critical lesson for Christians. For any Christian out there who wants to understand how to reach out to an agnostic, atheist kind of person, you do not bring up the Bible. You do not bring up, you do not insist upon something that insists upon itself. So we're going to take the Bible out of that, y'all, and we're just going to say that, let's say that I don't know, that there's a friend of mine. It's really hilarious, these people that come back from a mystical experience on psychedelics and they don't believe in God yet, and they come back and they say like stuff like, oh, well, the universe told me blah, or my spirit guide or whatever told me blah, all this stuff, right? But my favorite is the universe, because it's like, hello, dude, like, what do you think the universe is, right? But regardless of whatever thing is imparting and elucidating these mystical revelations to you, they would mean absolutely nothing at all unless you didn't already have the capacity to understand that which is being communicated to you. It would be pointless, worthless, period. And so knowledge of God in that capacity equals knowledge of the self. Period. That's it. Like, that's the whole thing. That perfectly wraps up, in my opinion, rationalism, materialism to some degree. I wouldn't go so far as to say materialism, because we still don't know what the hell the mind is and consciousness is. So a materialist can't even explain it. And don't get me started about microtubules, y'all. Oh, yes, we can. It's microtubules. Explain to me microtubules. Explain to me how that works. Because you're going to have to explain to me how quantum mechanics works, and you can't. No one can. But let me get back to my point here. It perfectly encapsulates all of those things. New Age mysticism, rationalism, and then belief in God. And you can even stretch this into Christianity, y'all. I mean, freaking Christ himself, call me crazy, call me whatever you want to call me, y'all, but I have talked to the guy several times. And I know I sound crazy. Go listen to that episode, y'all. I forget which trip episode it's called, but I think it's. I'm gonna pause right here and tell you about the episode. Okay, so the episode is called, on YouTube, it's called Heroic Dose Trip Report. I spoke with Christ. It used to be called something like, don't listen to this, this is not important, or something like that as a joke. But yeah, it's called Heroic Dose Trip Report, I Spoke with Christ. Okay, I told you about the episode. Go listen to that episode and listen to the subsequent episode called What the Heck Just Happened, or something like that. In fact, I'll drop in the real name of that right now. Okay, the actual episode name is just called What Just Happened. In fact, it's all in, exclamation points, so it's more like, what just happened? But, go check that out. And you'll if you're watching this on YouTube, go check out the links in the description for those episodes. To me, it's undeniable that I was talking to Christ. It's undeniable. But when Christ himself tells you that he is life itself, and then and how that is how everything is interconnected. We are called to love our neighbor as ourselves because of this shared life force, this field of consciousness, which we are just like waves within this field, but the field is not disconnected. It's all connected, and because we are all the same thing, we are all the self. We need to love our neighbor as ourself, because our neighbor is ourself, and that is only heightened and broadened by the fact that the only way that I can relate to anyone is for me to dive within myself to find common traits that I share with another person. It's beautiful, and that's the same way we find God. It's a beautiful, as above, so below fractal mechanism of discovery, and beautiful, like, I'm going to stop short of saying enlightenment, but it is. I mean, I think it would be. I think you could call it enlightenment. It's certainly not darkening. We'll just call it making yourself less dark. How about that? But that mechanism, y'all, is the key to this whole thing. And so again, we can strip the word God out of the equation here, out of the sentence. In fact, my friend Ben, I think it was Ben, it was either Ben or Sergio. I'm pretty sure it was Ben, though. When I told him about this, debate that I got in with this guy, and I was like, yeah, and he challenged me towards the end of like, do you have a greater capacity for love as a believer than I do as a non-believer? And again, you can't prove either way. It's impossible. But my friend Ben started kind of laughing immediately, and not like in a maniacal, like, sarcastic laugh or something like that. But it was almost like an inviting, playful laugh. Like he wasn't being like smarmy. But regardless, he said, that's funny, because if you just replace the word God with self, or, yourself, that sentence becomes laughably kind of like silly. And it's like not even worth asking. It's like, so let's do that. Let's replace the word God in that sentence with the word self, or yourself. Does knowing yourself broaden and deepen your capacity for love? Yes or no? Anyone who says no to that is doing so. They're only saying no out of spite, because there is no argument here, y'all. If you know yourself better, you have a deeper and broader capacity for love, period. If you are able to forgive yourself first, you are able to forgive others. And y'all, if you do not think that forgiveness is love, then I'm sorry, you have the wrong idea. Y'all, self-love is what it's all about. Loving yourself is the first step towards loving others. And sure, there can be a dark side to that, a double-edged sword kind of thing. Someone who loves themselves too much, y'all, can become very narcissistic and do terrible things. But guess what? That's not real love. That's just infatuation. There is a big freaking difference between true love and infatuation. Go watch a movie. It's the movie that won Best Picture in 2024. It's called Anora. Go watch that movie. That movie perfectly and very beautifully, very poetically, and very concisely just slams you in the face with the stark difference between infatuation and true love. And it's heartbreakingly beautiful, heartbreakingly simple. It'll just break your heart into a million pieces in the right way. And when you can start to love yourself like that first, that is the first step to loving other human beings in a deeper and broader capacity. When you can forgive yourself, you can start to forgive others. And y'all, the dark side of this too. If you hate yourself, the way you're going to treat other people is going to be the hatred of the self is just a macrocosm of the hatred that you're going to spill out to others. Period. The self is a portal to all. The self, I'll say that in a different way, for those hermetic philosophy kind of folks out there. The self is a portal to the all, y'all. The self is a portal to God. The self is a portal to everyone and everything, and everything and everyone is consciousness. I treat these words that I'm about to say as all being the same thing. Existence, consciousness, what else can I throw in there? Free will, God, love, you. Those are all the same thing. Yeah, I think that's it. I think I can go to work now. I've said it all, said all I needed to say. So I wanted to sprinkle a little bit at the end here about, I think it's important for us to see the other perspective here. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I had that debate in the first place, is because I wanted this channel to be, a challenge. I didn't want this to be just an echo chamber. But in that vein, right, I wanted to, again, understand the perspective on the other side so that we're not all upset at each other, right? And yes, parlaying into what I've been talking about in this episode, I do feel like that I am more capable, and I'm not, before I start here, I'm not trying to compare myself to anyone. I'm comparing myself to my former self right now. I am more capable now at empathizing and putting myself in the perspective, or trying to imagine the perspective of other people. I find that I am like damn near infinitely better at that. I was always a highly empathetic person, and that didn't change. But what did change is the degree and capacity of my empathy. And so I think it's important, and I'm going to do it. Well, I think what we have to put into perspective here for believers that are listening to me, what we have to put into perspective is that, of course, not everyone is a believer, and we have to be tolerant and okay with that. And furthermore, we have to, like I said earlier in the episode, we have to not only take a gentle hand, but we also should not insist upon something that insists upon itself. If the person doesn't even believe that the thing that insists upon itself is credible at all, right? Which is, I would say, most atheists and most agnostics think the Bible is, just kind of a silly, story, right? And so you can't come around and say the Bible is true, and, why is it true? Because it is. Where's your proof? Well, the proof is in the Old Testament. It says that all these things would happen, and then they happened. It's like, well, anyone can go and write, I don't know how many years after I don't want to do the research, but I don't know how many years after the Old Testament, someone had enough time, is what I'm saying, to carefully write down, here's all the things that the Old Testament predicted. Let me now write a story that these predictions happen inside of this story. Oh, you cannot approach a freaking atheist or agnostic with that crap. And I'm sorry I'm calling it crap. I'm not calling it crap because the New Testament is crap. I freaking love the New Testament. I think the New Testament is awesome, etc. Don't get me started. I'm calling it crap because it's a non-starter with a non-believer, y'all, in most cases. In 90+%, 99, like 95 to 98% of the cases, it's a non-starter. You have to come and approach them with something personal, something beautiful, something that gives them pause, takes their breath away, if that is even doable. But anyways, getting back to what I was saying, the agnostic, the atheist kind of person, unless they're very gentle about how they handle themselves and everything, they're generally upset about the hypocrisy. Let's just call a spade a spade. They are upset with the hypocrisy that they see in organized faith, organized religion, specifically Christianity, which is rampant. I hate to say this, y'all, especially kind of in the West here, with judgment, hypocrisy, anger, vitriol, like, you just go down the list, y'all, of things that are inherently not Christ-like. And you can quickly, hopefully, y'all, again, put down your swords and your pitchforks and your tar and feather here, and just try to understand someone's perspective, right? Just try. And if you could, you would kind of understand how someone would be not cool with this. In fact, so not cool with it that if I, as an atheist or agnostic, have any virtues whatsoever, they are better than the virtues that are, let me rephrase this. If I have any virtues that I have garnered myself, right? You don't need a Bible to tell you to be nice to people, y'all. You really don't. You actually really don't. You also don't need a Bible to tell you, to treat others the way you want to be treated. You kind of don't. And the virtues that one garners and develops and nourishes and bolsters or whatever, all this, that they are able to derive without it being forced upon you and someone telling you this is the way you should behave, and if you don't behave like this, you're going to hell. There is a degree of, how do I put this? It's like, it just stirs the pot even more, y'all, with their unease and dislike of God, and Jesus and people who go around, wielding his name and likeness for purposes, yada yada yada. You understand what I'm trying to say. And if you don't, I wish you could. I wish you could. It's like, I'm actually glad, y'all, that I lived that life for 37 years, because I now have empathy for these people, and believe it or not, love for these people. But from the other side of this, and forgiveness and everything, y'all, it's not that they even need to be forgiven. It's just that, well, first of all, we all need to be forgiven for something. But I don't think these people need to be forgiven for scoffing at hatred, hypocrisy, judgment, etc. And so I wanted everyone to really kind of chill out. And I'm looking at you, like intense, turbo Christians is what I call them. Just chill for a second. And then on the other side, okay, the atheist agnostic side, I'm going to shift back towards y'all. And I want you to understand that not every Christian is like that. Number one, I know, again, in the West here, especially, the people that are in the limelight, the loud minority, not the silent majority, the loud minority is going to be the extremes, right? And so, yes, I'm with you. Like, these people are freaking crazy, and I can't, honestly, I hate to say this, I can't, I'm striving and working hard to be Christ-like, okay? But I'm not there. I'm not perfect. So don't anyone think that I should be followed in that regard. But I can't stand being around those kind of people. I'm sorry. Really am. And so again, I further identify with the atheist, agnostic, rationalist, materialist types. But again, realize that not all Christians are like that. And I'm not merely trying to defend myself here, but I'm going to use myself as an example because it's the best example I have, because I know myself more than I know anyone else. But I myself, y'all, am a complex collage of, Christianity and honestly faith in general. Like I lean heavily Eastern, Buddhism, Hinduism, and then I don't know if it's coincidental or if there is something about the East, y'all, but I'm definitely, when it comes to Christianity, Eastern Orthodox leaning. And I am because of the biggest reason. Well, the biggest reason I am, honestly, the thing that caught my attention at the beginning was when I started reading. I was reading this book, and in this book, they were talking about how the monks of Mount Athos, these Eastern Orthodox monks, would engage in incredibly intense, deep meditative prayer with the goal of attaining what they call uncreated light. And that's all the book said. It said a little bit of something else. I was like, what in the world is uncreated light? I went and I researched it, and the more I researched it, the more it sounded exactly like my ayahuasca experiences, my psilocybin experiences, my encounters with God. I was like, what? You can attain this without psychedelics? You can attain this through spiritual, like meditative prayer? And then I start reading more. And I stumble upon, I think I misinterpret, I'm still doing research on this, and the minutia is very particular. You know, it's like there's a lot of little things that I could get, that I can misunderstand. And what I picked up on, and this is one of the other biggest reasons why I lean more Eastern Orthodox, is that unlike Roman Catholicism, who puts Jesus as like kind of like on the, how do I say this? On the exact same level as God, right? And my understanding is that Eastern Orthodox kind of does too, just in a different way. What it seems, what I've seen in my research is that in Eastern Orthodox, Jesus is more of a bridge to the divine, right? And you could say that it is for Roman Catholicism as well. But I think there's some big differences, right? I think that, you know, like the East treats Jesus more as a human being. And I think that is a critically important thing. I think that is honestly the most important thing. Like, again, any Christian, I ask you, what is more inspiring to you, that Jesus was God or Jesus was a human? If it's more inspiring that Jesus was God to you, I gotta say, I'm pretty good at identifying with people. I don't know if I can identify with that. To me, God becoming a human being, and by the way, I'm going to be touching on this big time in my next episode, my trip episode. To me, God becoming a human being and humbling himself. I was about to say something, y'all, a bit of information that was given to me on one of my experiences about that in particular, but I'm going to save that for the next episode. But let's just say that God fully committed to being a human. Fully. And he became what he became. He overcame what he overcame. And instead of teaching us, y'all, a lot of people get it confused. Jesus did not teach us. He showed us. He showed us that which was already here, that which was already in us. He showed us. And that is what I pick up when and by the way, I didn't, all of this was told to me by the man himself. And again, I have episodes coming out about these experiences. I didn't read this in a book. I didn't even read this in the Philokalia, the Eastern Orthodox book, right? This is stuff that I learned myself on my experiences. And then I read the Philokalia and stuff like, or I didn't read all of it, but I'm reading the Philokalia and I'm reading other stuff that it's kind of like pretty much saying that. But to put it in a nutshell, the East sees Christ's humanity as something we are mystically joined to and healed by, right? Versus the West, Roman Catholicism, and then kind of like the religions that spun off of that. The West sees Christ's divinity as something we must be saved by in a more judicial kind of sense. And I think that distinction sets a tone. And I think it sets, honestly, kind of there's even a soft way to look at that, y'all. But there's also a really hard way to look at that. And I think that hard way wins in a survival-based kind of system, which, make no mistake about it, everything that humans do just about is survival-based. And so in a existence dominated by survival, of course, the more intense kind of outlook is going to win out. And so, yes, I think in the West, we have some things mixed up about this particular thing, y'all. And I personally think that go research, if you are so inclined, why the Eastern Orthodox faith split off from Roman Catholicism. I don't even know what the religion was called. I think it was just called the church before that. And they had different factions of the church or whatever, but I think it was just called the church. And then when it split off, it was like, oh, well, now we're going to call this Roman Catholicism and this Eastern Orthodox. But research, if you are so inclined, why that schism and that departure happened. And it has everything to do with, in my opinion, the most important thing, at least on this planet, that we know of. And to me, it's the universe and the multiverse beyond, because I know what Jesus truly is. And he is not just bound to this planet with well, I'm going to stop short of saying something else that would get me in trouble with Christians and stuff. But I lost my train of thought here. Oh gosh, dang it. I totally lost it. I need to wrap this up anyway, though, y'all. I'm getting a little long-winded about all this stuff. All I'm trying to say here, y'all, is there is a softer side, a more loving side, a side that I feel like is more in tune with love your neighbor as you love yourself. And not because I'm going to judge you and send you to hell if you don't. I just like what I was going to release at the end of this episode a whole another rebuttal of this other aspect of this debate that me and this guy got into, where we talked about the baboon troop that found a stockpile of, it was like a trash heap from a resort, and they dumped all of their buffet items in this trash heap, and all these baboons. Baboons are an incredibly violent species, and their culture evolved into one of cooperation, love, and peace. And I was going to make the argument that, and this is still something, and when I say that, I was going to make a much longer retort of this at the end of this episode, but I think it's best kind of just shoehorned at the very end here to finalize this analysis. And again, it's this softer approach to Jesus, right? This, we can become like him, right? We can tap into that essence. I know it in a slightly different way, y'all, that I, again, won't necessarily get into quite fully here, because there's stuff coming up in the next episode in particular. But suffice it to say that we share the same essence. Jesus is life itself. And when you look at it like that, instead of this judgmental kind of thing and sends you to hell kind of thing, just like this baboon troop and this argument that I was going to make, y'all, when my debate opponent told me, he was like, hey, the fact that these baboons became peaceful and loving, it's not because that's their true nature, right? And that's what, what they're called to be because of their true nature. It's simply because there are abundant resources now, and I no longer have to fight, right? The survival strategy changes from fight, bite, and claw for resources. It changes from, hey, it changes from that to, hey, there's now plenty of resources to go around, and fighting risks life and limb for nothing. If there's plenty to go around, it's better to share, it's better to cooperate in this kind of environment. And I would say two things to that. One is, in my last episode, I brought this up. I don't think that fully explains the escalation of affection that you see when animals do, in fact, realize that they no longer have to fight. There is an obvious love beyond mere, like, to me, if it was so cut and dry, materialistic, survival based, it would be like, hey, I no longer have to fight you, and that's it. I'm going to eat now, and I may look at you while I'm eating, and that's kind of the extent of it. But these animals, once they realize they don't have to fight each other anymore, they go and they love on each other and groom each other and snuggle and play and all this other stuff. And it doesn't, that leap doesn't make sense to me if it was purely just strictly survival based, rational based, Maslow's hierarchy of needs based, etc. kind of stuff. But this next part, y'all, I think is the kind of alley-oop slam dunk. Like what I just mentioned was the basketball player throwing the ball up, right? And then the second part of the alley-oop is the other basketball player coming and slam dunking it. And that's what I think this is when I say that there's a big difference, y'all, between resignation and becoming. And what I mean by that is a baboon that has to fight because there are scarce resources. They are resigned to that fact. They would rather not, but they do it anyway, right? That should make abundant sense. Something that realizes that it no longer has to fight, even if this is a completely alien and foreign experience, because, large food caches don't just pop up out of nowhere. Well, I guess they do, but what I'm trying to say is, like, it's not it's a very incredibly rare thing, and doesn't happen really. Except but anyway, it does happen. But I'm just saying, like, on average, that's not gonna happen to you as a friggin' baboon, right? And it's a completely foreign and alien experience when you no longer have to fight in your typical, incredibly violent baboon culture, right? And so it may take a little bit of getting used to, but it is still, y'all, not a resignation. Not even close to, I am not resigning to the fact that I no longer have to fight you and I can now snuggle you, groom you, and play with you. That's not it at all. It is a becoming. It's not even volunteering, y'all, because volunteering takes a conscious effort, a conscious act. I call it becoming because it's a natural evolution. It's like breathing. It's just something that is natural, that just happens. And it happens with all freaking animals that, I can't speak for like single-celled organisms. I have no idea what their version of love might be, but I'm not even going to go there. But at least intelligent enough animals that I can relate to in any capacity, they pretty much all of them respond to love, and in the same way. And you do not see resignation in that equation. And that message is what I want to end on here, because I think that when you accept Christ in the way that I accept him, and I say I, y'all, again, my understanding of Christ is my understanding, right? I can't account for all other understandings, okay? But when you account, or whenever you accept Christ in the way that I do, in the way that from what I understand so far, the way the Eastern Orthodox faith does, there is no judgmental kind of, I don't know. I don't know. And I'm sure there's all kinds of stuff in Eastern Orthodox that is judgmental and all this stuff. But from what I'm seeing and feeling so far, it's kind of not so far. But again, but even if it is, y'all, if it did become that to me, I would throw it out. I would cherry pick, and say, this is the stuff I like about this, and this is the stuff I don't. But again, my understanding of Christ based on my friggin' face-to-face conversations with him, y'all, there is not a shred of judgment. There is not a shred of anger or anything negative like that, y'all. It is nothing but love. Absolutely nothing but unconditional, uncategorical love and the highest form of forgiveness. There are no levels of hell. There are only levels of forgiveness. This is what the man told me himself. And he said that he is at the highest tippy top peak, infinite level of uncategorical forgiveness, across the board forgiveness. That says everything. And when you factor that into this equation, this whole thing becomes a becoming instead of a resignation. And I'm going to end on that. I love you all. All right, there you have it. That is hopefully the last I will ever do a rebuttal or a retort of that debate that I got into or whatever. I feel like that I've fired all my cannons and have exhausted all avenues of analysis on the flawed arguments on both sides of that debate, both my flawed arguments and his flawed arguments. Okay, so I feel like I hit the major topics, and it's time to move on. Okay, I'm grateful for the experience. I actually, believe it or not, love to be challenged and have the rug pulled out from under my previously, siloed and compartmentalized thoughts and beliefs. I wouldn't, have done plant medicine in the first place if I didn't have the desire to uproot my entire way of thinking. And so this guy basically did that again, and I'm grateful for the experience. When your ideas and thoughts and beliefs and everything are shattered into a million pieces and you have to rebuild them, sometimes, well, actually, I feel like most of the time, it's whatever you rebuild is stronger than it was before. And so, believe it or not, I'm grateful for the experience. And the only last little critique that I would give for this guy, because he critiqued me, here's my critique back. My critique back is, it's very simple. Stop being a troll. That's it. There are much more pleasant ways to engage in discourse where both parties come out of the experience, when you enter into a disagreement kind of conversation with your middle finger already out and in someone's face, any negative response you get back is your fault, period. I'm sorry to say that. I've had plenty of people that disagree with me fundamentally on my channel that have made comments that are pleasant, and we engage in a very amicable, amazing conversation where I feel like we both learn from the exchange and we're not friggin' pissed off at each other. That's the way to do it. Okay, you do not do it by attacking someone. And I can hear this guy right now saying like, well, I didn't attack, I was just being brutally honest, right? And my way to show love for my fellow man, love thy neighbor, right, because we both kind of agreed on that, remember? My way of showing that love is brutal honesty to course correct someone's destructive behavior, y'all. And the more brutal you are in that situation, the better, because people that are too ensconced and entrenched in their destructive behavior need to be like shaken up, right? And so that's the role I play, and that's what I do. That's how I bring about the most good to this world. Okay, that is my love language, and I'm sorry for going there. Okay, but hopefully people see, but more importantly, understand the problem that we have here. By adopting this mentality, I am not only saying that you're wrong and I'm right. It's one thing to say that, all right, but because I view it as my duty to brutally course correct your ignorance, all right, I am also saying that I am not only intellectually superior to you, but I am also morally superior to you as well. And how could it be argued otherwise? I know more than you do, okay? I am smarter and I have done more research. Your ignorance is inexcusable. There's a big problem here, y'all. There's a really big problem. And there is a much better way to go about handling something like this, okay? There's just a much better way. And it basically can boil down to just one simple thing. Stop being a troll. That's it. Anyways, that's really all I'm going to say on this topic. Henceforth, I apologize for dedicating several episodes to this, but again, I do think it was necessary to get this right. Okay, so yeah, on to the next round of subjects and the next few episodes, y'all. I've got some trip report episodes coming up in short order, y'all. And I say episodes plural. Some amazing, absolutely freaking mind-blowingly awesome, beautiful stuff is on the way. I promise, and it's just gonna be awesome. Just wait. I can't wait to show y'all. So stay tuned. I love you all, and again, just be nice to each other. If you disagree with someone, disagree pleasantly, okay? And try to see things from their perspective, as hard as that may be, even if you think that they're an idiot, y'all. Anyways, I love you all. Bye.